So picture a narcissist, not the confident friend who loves their new haircut, but the person whose entire sense of self is built on fragile scaffolding. On the outside, they look polished, powerful, and shakable, but in the inside, think glass masquerading as steel. Because their sense of worth is unstable, they constantly scan their environment asking, am I in control? Am I safe? Am I superior? And the quickest way to answer those questions is to see whether they can influence someone else's emotions. To a narcissist, emotions are power gauges. Healthy people read people's feelings to connect. Narcissists read people's feelings to measure control. They could poke at your insecurities, dismiss your accomplishments, or jokingly criticize something that's very personal to you. Then they watch. They see how you react. Do you flinch, withdraw? Do you try to defend the position or appease them? If you do, then they think, that's great. They can affect you. They can control you. To them, your reaction is not a sign they hurt you. It's proof they're still in a dominant position. And emotional vulnerability, that feels dangerous to narcissists, whether it's your emotional vulnerability or their emotional vulnerability. Because narcissists, they fear emotional intimacy, just like most people fear heights. It's not that they don't want that closeness, but that closeness makes them feel exposed. And that's why they can't help but test your emotions. Almost like someone tapping at a rope, like a rope bridge to see if they want to cross it. Thinking, if it can hold their weight, will it collapse? And if they sense too much closeness, they may push you away emotionally just to establish that distance and feel safer. And, narcissists, they have their ways of pushing people away. Sometimes they say something hurtful after a sensitive moment between you. Maybe they'll mock you about something that you opened up about, kind of make you feel a bit distant. Or they might pull away when you show affection. They have their ways of putting that distance. But it's never about you. It's just the narcissist trying to control their own vulnerability and fear of dependence. And trying to prod at people's emotions. Narcissists, they really want to see who will tolerate their behavior, who will let them get away with it and who won't. Because subconsciously, narcissists are thinking, are you somebody they can control? Are you somebody who might challenge them? And if you set boundaries for yourself, if you stand up for yourself, or if you don't react emotionally, then they might lose interest in you, or they might switch tactics. But if you try to please them, if you try to apologize for things that aren't your fault, if you show them that they can hurt you, if you try to justify yourself, then they just interpret that as permission to keep on doing what they're doing. And that's what makes their testing so insidious, because they map you out. They're mapping out your emotional pressure points. Think like a chess player analyzing weaknesses on a board. And when they can actually instill that emotional injury in you, it gives them that sense of superiority. But here's the darker part of it. The narcissist's ego is hungry. They're hungry for validation. And hurting someone emotionally can feel like a quick hit of superiority. They're stronger, they're smarter. They see that you rely on them more than they rely on you. And narcissists, you may think they're after happiness, joy, good moments. They're not after any of that. Narcissists, they're not after joy. They're not after happiness. They're just after relief. It's that ongoing, gnawing feeling of insignificance or powerlessness. They just want relief from that, and that's what they're trying to achieve. Because for a moment, causing you emotional pain quietens that fear of it. And many narcissists, they might not consciously know what they're doing. And that can surprise a lot of people. because they think that narcissists are conniving and planning like villains, but they're not always like that. It's just their reflexes, the way they grew up, survival patterns, their insecurities. Testing other people's emotions is simply how they maintain that illusion of stability inside themselves. It doesn't make their behavior acceptable, of course, but understanding that can help you protect yourself without internalizing their actions as reflections of your worth.